But if you have something that you really believe in and you know it's going to take a lot and you're going to have to develop yourself in a way you are not built yet, and you know you have to take on a path that to achieve such a vision, it's going to need to change the way you act or behave. That when that was introduced to me, that made me realize, all right, I don't know anything about this, and this is 2010, but I will have to start figuring it out.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the High Performance Management Podcast, episode 22. Here I am joined with Jesse Emia, founder and director of KeepSpace. It's a logistics distribution channel connecting e-commerce with real distribution channels. And you've been operating for quite a number of years now, starting here in Perth, which is how I first met Jesse, and now launching out with the massive goal of bringing it to $250 million per year revenue, which is really interested to get into that conversation there. I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I know it's been a long day for both of us, so I'm really excited to get into hearing the nitty-gritty. Thanks for coming on, Jesse.
You're most welcome, Corey. Happy to support your endeavors and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
So we'll get straight into it because e-commerce is massive now. And I think you've capitalized on something that is needed but probably wasn't thought about for a while. And you've just, I know you had Koala Box before. So maybe just talk us on how you saw KeepSpace, the idea, and how it came to fruition, and what was kind of the deciding factors that made you want to go down this path. And maybe give it a little update, a better explanation of what I did about exactly what KeepSpace does.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a story and then I'll give you an explanation. So the story goes, 2013, I'm driving 2011, I'm driving a truck in the northern Western Australian desert land where my parents raised me in the mining sector. And as I'm driving a truck, I'm realizing as I'm making $85K a year, driving this whole truck, carrying iron ore to the trains for processing for the China boom period. I'm realizing like this boom period won't last forever. I know that there will be a seasonal low, and I don't know if I want to be doing this for a really long time. So I'm looking at different opportunities in the marketplace. I'm looking for ways to be able to set my own path, per se, getting out of the truck and trying to create some kind of business that I would be proud of without much business knowledge because both my parents are working class citizens there. My dad's been a whole truck driver and an operator, a trainer for heavy vehicle and machinery. My mom was a nurse who went into the mining sector because she followed dad, and as us as a family going into the mining sector, the hospitals in the remote areas wasn't really that great pay. So my mom became a pit controller in Rio Tinto, where they both worked together for decades. And so that's where that started. And so while I'm in this world, I went to the only source of knowledge I had at the time, which was Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, both the English and the Canadian version. And I really liked the Canadian version back then in 2011. It was there was a business model that popped up on one of the episodes, and it was called Frogbox. And Frogbox was a Canadian company. And this is just after a business venture that really didn't go so well. I won't go into it because it'll be too far in the past. So I'm recovering, working these trucks, and I'm watching these Dragon's Dens episodes, listening to these investors take huge equity shares out of these companies. And one of them on the Canadian show was this guy who says, look, guys, when you're moving a house, instead of using a cardboard box that you have to open up and fold up and then sticky tape the bottom and flip it over and put stuff in, we've got these plastic tubs where you can put them down and the lids are connected to it and you stack up and they're easily reusable, they're robust, and blah, 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 blah. Brand new concept back then in 2012 when I saw it. And I thought, this would be really cool because then I could get a product, source it from China. And instead of it being a product that I pay once for and then sell, I could pay it once and have it reused over multiple years. And therefore, the cost of the value of that product would be declined based on the amount of usage I would get out of it. So therefore, the margin hopefully would be quite high and extensive. So I get a 20-foot container full of these green plastic boxes. And then I call the company, not with a lot of ingeniousness. It was called Frog Box in Canada. I called it Koala Box in Australia. And that's literally how that went. And for the first financial years of that, the first financial year I made $18. Second financial year I made, I think it was like $9,000. Next year after that was 22,000. And the year after that, I think I got to 34. So I had 4 years of building this business. Every mistake possible was in those 4 years.
Yeah.
But it was being able to understand. Yeah, it was being able to understand everyone goes through a phase where everything that you think, like business cards, get them too early, putting down big banners on the vehicle was really good. And then spending money on developers to build a software system and negotiating that and working with agencies and getting them to rip. Can we swear on this, or is this not a swearing podcast?
We're from Australia, mate.
All
swear?
Good. Yeah, fucking awesome. So yeah, I got ripped off by these cunts, by these agencies that charged an arm and a leg, outsourced it and diluted it, the quality of service. Turning into a black box was really difficult, but that was the world I was coming into. And so after 4 years of trying to run Koala Box from my home, cleaning these boxes, distributing them across Australia, I ran into 3 obvious challenges based on that. The first challenge was urban density. Perth does not have urban density like Toronto or Houston or anywhere else. It's just a population of 1.8 million at that point, and therefore the density of the people that are in that is maybe like 800,000 when you don't take into consideration the suburban area around it within the CBD range. And out of that, you have a portion of people that are actually relocating within the same region, which therefore made a very small percentage. So that became challenging in itself. And then, of course, people who wanted an eco-friendly choice while still having the convenience of all these boxes. And then, so we thought, I've got these assets, got all these boxes. Is there something I can do with these assets without having to re-energize a whole new business? Can I leverage what I have and try to create more revenue out of it? So I'm going around, I'm looking, and I'm starting to spend time with startup community. I'm starting to spend time with the Perth morning startup team. I'm understanding back then it was Sync Labs over in Leaderville. There was a bunch of little community groups. Some of them are not around anymore, but the only one that's still going today is the one in St. George's Terrace. I should know these guys. The Morning Startup community group with Scott Glue and David. They've been going for a really long time. So I'm catching up with these guys. I'm getting an understanding. I'm understanding now about what investing and pitching is. I'm starting to practice my pitches. I'm starting to get an idea of operational practices. I'm getting an idea. Like, it's been 3 years in this practice. I'm getting into the 4th year, and I'm starting looking at the pivot. So I'm like, okay, with this 38,000, just got a new partner, and we're working together. Don't have a lot of money, got more debt than I could actually share. I thought, okay, what can I do? And I'm looking around and I'm watching at different pitch presentations. And one of them in America came up with the concept of make space. And make space was using these same green tubs that I had access to, filling it with content of other people's belongings and allowing them to take a photo and turning it into a category system, similar to back then Dropbox. I don't know anything like Dropbox today, or like let's say the Google Drive with photographic images. Having a file database of physical assets stored within another storage facility, and you to be able to pick whatever box you wanted and have it distributed to your home at any time. It's to create a digital storage facility. And that expanded into couches and tables and the boxes and clothes and boxes full of books. And if you've ever lifted a box full of books, it's like 35 kilos. These things are heavy and you're lugging them upstairs. And that became a new business model. And we pitched it to 3 verticals back then. That was to homeowners who were stage selling their property. They had to gut it to make it look pretty so they could sell the property. The other one was students during student break. So a lot of university students would nick off back home, want to put their stuff away in a self-storage unit or this option. And then there was small businesses who had a little bit too much inventory and they just wanted to put it aside somewhere. The life cycle of the homeowners was about 6 months. They would stage sell their property, then have all their stuff redistributed to their new property once they've sold their house and moved into the new one. The students were 3 months. They were taking their gear out by November, and then they had it all back by late January, back at school. And then there was the small business owners who had their stuff, and they were ongoing. They wouldn't stop putting their stuff with us. They would just like take a little bit out and a little bit here. But then we realized that their stuff that they were putting in, they wanted to. Oh, by the way, when I saw MakeSpace, I thought, oh, that's a cool name. Can't have that. So we played around, and there was a guy named Kieran who used to work with us with our first software design of making a category layout system like that. So Kieran said, well, what about KeepSpace? And so we called it KeepSpace. Keep your stuff in our space. KeepSpace. Yeah, that'll work. Let's go with that.
That's good.
So there wasn't like a big analytical, expensive thing behind it. It was just, it made sense. It's catchy. It's quick. Let's go. And just moved on with the rest of the business. Like even the logo design was made with I put it together in an Illustrator really quick. Took a copy from a Google template off Google Images, made a template and pounded it together. So the first like logo, like in my first business, the first one, Koala Box, I spent $4,000 on a 99 design campaign, and it was really, really expensive. It had this whole 3D generated koala and all the rest of it. But this time I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just doing it free, doing it cheap, because that stuff don't matter when you're in the early days. It really doesn't. But back then you think the glory of my brand must be expensive, and so I shall put the money coin in. And that's where, so all those mistakes, really valuable to learn. So then KeepSpace is then realizing out of those 3 verticals, one of them's really seemed to be a greater longevity, less work because you're always working with them. And then their request was to say, well, can you take it from a category system into an inventory count? I want to know that if I'm putting my stuff in your place, and I know how many I have. I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So we decided to drop the category layout of each box and whatever it had in it is that, and turn it into, well, this is the unit, and then that's in the box, and that's how much it has. And we entered into an inventory management system by default. So we started having an inventory management system. We had like bookings as instead of orders, but that was the infancy of KeepSpace, and that was in 2016.
Yeah.
And so from there, out of the progression, it moved across into, all right, guys, now that I know how much I have in there, I can't really spend all my time going to places. So could you maybe distribute it for me? Can you use Australia Post or something? These are our accounts. This is how much we do. We give it to you. Can you do it for us? And we said, we can do it for you. We'll do it cost price. We don't know what we're doing, so we'll do it no margin attached. And so it created a learning environment for us. And then we started doing our first integrations with Australia Post to be able to make this work. Pedal, pedal, pedal. And then after we had started working with that first business, which back then was Blackroll, it's a fitness company, and another business came along, and then another one. And then as we're spending time with the startup community, we're telling them what we're doing, that we're doing this distribution support with inventory management, the warehouses in Bayswater in Western Australia. And they're like, holy crap, I'm with like selling on Amazon, I'm selling on eBay, I've got this new WordPress platform, I'm on Shopify, my garage is getting overloaded. Can you take my stuff? He said, sure, mate. And so we would do the same extra service of going to their house, sit in their bedroom with them, go through the inventory, check what they had, do the count, do the check, because our software wasn't made in a way where it had like, oh, just sign up, fill in your form details, and off you go. We had to do a lot of customization, a lot of help. And then from that, we started to grow our volume, which then allowed us to get better rates with our carriers. We started entering into international shipments, which then created a connection with FedEx and DHL. Then we had businesses that started to say, look, I'm starting to send supply to these retail shops as well as my e-commerce customers. So can you send a parcel on a pallet over here and a pallet over there? So we started getting TNT and Star Trek on board to do those larger shipments. And then we started learning about how it is to put products from not just the small mom and pop retail shops, but now to Bunnings and to Woolworths and to BCF and Super Cheap Auto and those large subsidiaries behind the bigger corporations and doing their route structures. So it came through with that. Then it's like, okay, now I want to sell into a country where the import tax codes are super, super challenging. Can you just deal with that for me? I made the sales. I had this big campaign, got all these orders. Can you just get it done? So then we now are doing HS codes for products, being able to get through the tax and duties issues, getting those products into country on time so they don't get refunded. And now we're at a stage in the business where it's like, I love what you've done, but your time frame from Perth to Sydney is too long. 5 days is too long. The express shipments is not really express, it's more standard. So I'm not making big conversions. Can you get yourself to the East Coast? So in 2022, I said, family, we're fucking off. We're going over to Melbourne. And they'll be like, why Melbourne? Well, Sydney's super expensive. If you've seen the New South Wales real estate, it ain't the best. Brisbane is like sunny Perth, but it's not really super close. So we'll have to go to Melbourne because it's close enough to Tasmania, Canberra, Adelaide, and Sydney that it will not impact too much. So we go to shitty Melbourne. Sorry for everyone from Melbourne. The weather's terrible. And except for the snow. I like the snow. Snowboarding is amazing. But that's why we came to Melbourne from a geographical perspective, close to the Melbourne port. We set up, just after COVID finished, we set up a shed. Didn't really want to bet the farm with a big facility. We put in 2 locations for 750 square meters each, while we were then learning with our software to have it run pretty much an algorithm to state like if an order comes into a certain state, then it will choose a certain warehouse. And then from that warehouse, it will be distributed from there. And if the stock is 0 in that warehouse, then default to the other warehouse and distribute it from there. And if it doesn't come from there, then default it out of that first warehouse, get back to the first one and just call it out of stock until stock arrives. And so we were then having to do multiple warehouse management. And from all that time, now we're in 2024, we've built our software 4 times, and we're currently exiting 3.6 version to go to 4.2. And we're going to expire 3.6 because in 3.6 version that we built with our software, which is all built in-house, we pay our own internal development team. We've got an overseas team as well that supports our localized team here. We started getting businesses that had, when we first built it, we built with an expectation maybe they have 100 products. 100 products seems pretty reasonable for an online business. No. We got companies that are working with us and they got 4,000 products because they have so many variation and they're clothing lines and they change every season and they got to keep them in line. I'm like, oh my God. And so our system would slow down. It would be really heavy for the server. So we had to literally rebuild it, which is what we're doing now, as well as take all the improvements of our admin side and make it presentable. So we've got really clear transparency on how much the pricing is. We've got really good communication with every single order. And we have a company that I won't name them, but I'm going to blow smoke up my own rear. What they've said they have a 3PL service like ours in Canada. They've got one in Germany. They've got one in France. They've got one in South Africa. And they also have one in Japan. And they said, of all the software systems that they have used across all of those different countries, ours is by far, hands down, the best. And the reason why it's the best is because from a software but that's a whole other question. But that's what they're saying. I'll tell you the reason another time when I get down there. But that's effectively what KeepSpace does, and that's the story.
So you're switching now into almost software. Sounds like, which is cool.
Yes, we are. We're gonna be
so there's a lot to unpack there.
Too.
I appreciate the background, and I think I met you when I was working at Optus in 2017. So that was early days then. I think I was trying to sell you some phones. I can't remember. But it sounds like now you're in full business mode. You've had the experience. You've had the failures of Koala Box, and you learned from them, hopefully, by the sounds of it you have. And then now you're developing all these new skill sets. I guess it sounds to me from like a mindset point of view that you kind of had this drive. From my experience, you can't really just get it unless you're around someone doing it, or you're reading, or you're paying someone to learn. So what was kind of that education period, besides just failing and learning from the failures? What was one of the key contributing factors to your ability to continuously grow?
It's like two core memories that come up to mind. The first one, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I'm a man of faith, right? That's where it's perfect. And I served as a missionary after my time in the military. So I served in the Australian Defence Force from 2000 to 2003 as an active reservist. And then when I finished around 2004, when I was sort of closing up, I then became a missionary for Youth with a Mission from 2005 through to 2008. And through that time, I learned discipline during the time in the military, and I learned empathy and human suffering during my time overseas. So when I was overseas, I spent time in Nepal, Thailand, and just really connected with the people, understanding what third world life is like, and wanting to see change. And as someone who was not having a job, was living on donations from church, you realize very quickly there's only so many holes you can dig. There's only so many churches you can support. There's only so many kids you can mentor at that kind of life. And the need is huge. It's a huge, huge need to help people have a better life for their families when you don't have the ability or financial capacity to make change for that kind of scale. You can on a local level, but on a larger level, forget it. It takes so much momentum, and it's so hard. So out of that, I realize I'm not going to be able to make the kind of change that's going to be valuable enough before I go to the grave to really do enough to see that kind of lifestyle for those type of individuals dissipate. I can't do it. So I need to find a way on how I can do that. So that's when I went from around 2008, 2007, 2008. I thought, all right, I'll go to university. I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to go get a job. And then I'm going to go make that money. And I'm going to make that money work and help other people. Found out pretty quick that don't work either. It really don't work. Like, I spent 2 years at Edith Cowan University through 2008, 2009 as a senior student. As I'm watching all these, 17, 18-year-old kids going in, I'm coming in at 23, learning how to do management and how to get a job in the government sector. And $60,000. That was back then a lot of money for a job
Mm.
salary. And I realized I'm not sure if I can achieve this way. Because when you have that kind of impact in your life and you realize like you're asleep on the ground, you're surrounded by huge communities that don't mind that life, but you can see that there's low education, there's minimal opportunity to create wealth in landlocked areas, or even in Thailand where um, some of their industries could definitely be improved upon. It takes tremendous change in financial capabilities and capital to do that kind of stuff. And I wanted to be one of those guys. Didn't know how. I just knew that was there, and that's where the drive and will came from. And then all the education and everything else sort of followed from that.
Mm. So sounds like you just kind of awoken something. You kind of maybe got the spirit when you were around them. And one thing you consistently said then was you didn't know, you knew you weren't, what you were doing wasn't going to be giving you enough. How did you come to that realization? Did you start calculating, well, if I'm going to help these guys, I need to have X amount of money. I need to, because I have a similar philosophy. That's why I think it's funny. I say, if you want to help 1 billion people, you could have $1 billion. And that's kind of how I think myself. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
In a simplistic approach, you're right. Yeah. But how do you get the billion? And how do you get the billion without losing your morality in the approach, or selling your soul for the dollar, which is a whole other challenge. The thing that I found that was the second memory that came to mind was when I was at university, I met a woman. She was Chinese. We connected up and became sweetheart romance, and we ended up marrying one another. She came from mainland China, and I learned Mandarin, and that's where my whole understanding of importing came from and sourcing products came from at a really basic level through genuine experience and spending time in China. And her father was a fishing tackle manufacturer. And when I was doing my studies at university and then getting the first job and trying to be a good governing citizen to Australia, and I told him how much I was making at $65,000 a year back in 2010, 2009, 2010, so around there. He said to me, "Hey, so how much you make a week?" I told him, and how much you make a year. And I tell him the amounts and told him, I make about $800 a week after tax. Super cool. Felt so proud about myself. And he said, "Oh, hey, why don't you just do that in 2 sales? And you have your money." And then at the time, the concept of that was like,
just boom, mind blown.
Oh my God. It blew my mind, because I'm like, I never thought about the concept of product and service to be expandable without it being traded for the time I had. Because I knew I had so much time, but I didn't. But I've been using that time based on an hourly ratio, because that was what was drilled into me as a structure of value to society, which is in itself a honorable thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong.
We need people doing it.
And there's nothing wrong with working for someone if you believe in the vision of that business. I just want to make that very clear. There's absolutely nothing wrong with supporting a vision that you believe in, and you get a lifestyle that you're happy with the salary that you pay, because it manages the life you have. But if you have something that you really believe in, and you know it's going to take a lot, and you're going to have to develop yourself in a way you are not built yet, and you know you have to take on a path that to achieve such a vision, it's going to need to change the way you act or behave. That, when that was introduced to me, that made me realize, all right, I don't know anything about this, and this is 2010, but I will have to start figuring it out. And that was the second one. And that's where the drive came. That's where I came from.
So he was almost like you could say the rich dad in Rich Dad Poor Dad. He made you realize.
Kiyosaki?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's go with that.
And so you started. Would you say that was kind of your first business mentor? Gave you that comparison to be able to start
Yeah,
taking the
it
action
was.
necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was.
And so that's a lot of your drive. And, you know, that was kind of the inception point of, well, okay, I'm going to start trading my hours a bit more effectively. And you went down that path of Koala Box and onwards. And so now with KeepSpace, 2016, you started it up. In 2022, you moved over to Melbourne. That next stage, you've clearly got a big vision. Is that how linked is that to, like you said, those two drivers of, Jesus Christ and being able to impact people? How interlinked is that vision with that?
It's still very interlinked, but there's something you shared just a moment ago. I just want to backtrack on that real quick. Where trading my hourly rate for productivity is probably where that changed, because I'll definitely come back to you that question, but for the one that I'm thinking about, so before it gets into the topic, that practice and that process of learning a skill set and learning a trade and learning a value to add to society, you can get accustomed to the value that you're paid for that. But then when you realize that there is another value, which is the one that I'm realizing about creating a value that's not skilled to me and not something I know anything about, and trying to equivalate, and this is where a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle here, taking the salary of the skill set that they've spent maybe the last 4 years developing to now having a skill set where they're at zero, and trying to take the salary of where they are at 60, 70, 80, whatever it is today, and bringing it to this point where truly it's zero. That can be very difficult to accept or take on. And so this approach of what you're talking about of trading my hours for this other one, I didn't really trade the hours. It was more like I had to relearn all over again and have to accept that those hours must be taught at the same time frame. And I know I'm going to have to put in half a decade, maybe a whole decade, to get to the same level I was, but it's at a different proportion. And that's something
different vehicle,
where a lot of my colleagues and business owners will spend the first year, give it a year, and think, oh, it's not working out. I'm out. But it's actually putting it in and having the commitment to make it and learn and be humble enough to take all the slaps in the face and all the failures and let the pride fall away, so you can become a greater person than you are than when you started. Just like you were when you go to uni for the very first day and you're going to become a doctor or a builder or whatever it is the trade that's going to be. So then back to your original question that you said before, like, where does my faith fall in amongst all this and how has it progressed from here? It comes into the team and it comes into the community I'm surrounded by. So for team within KeepSpace, every person that joins KeepSpace, the values that I have in myself and in my family, I clearly would project it into the business. Some people say, no, you should separate business from family. For me, it's merged so much together, it's very difficult. So values of integrity, values of trust, values of humility, values of being open and honest when you make a mistake. And for the leaders in the company, values to have empathy and understanding and allowing them to take their mistakes and help them learn from it instead of going directly to, that's incompetency, there's the door. Because every leader will have usually two ways. Neither is wrong, but there's two ways. Either one, when an error is made, it's either gone to develop the person or it's gone to redundancy for the person. Both, it's straight down the line, 50-50. There's great leaders that do both ways. But me personally, I'm the one that's on developing people. I choose that path because I find that every error, every costly mistake is an expense that I am paying to invest into that person's future And what I'm also trying to do is encapsulate the culture of value that the lessons learned not only allows the patience to be grown and into that person from myself as a leader, but also allows the other leaders to take reflection upon that and say that they will make mistakes. It's okay to make a mistake. And therefore, if you make a mistake if the person comes and says, look, I'm so sorry, I damaged that stuff on that back shelf. I hit it with the vehicle. It's all broken. And then, we find out it's worth about $8,000 worth of material and it's super expensive. And then we go tell the business, we just busted all this stuff up and we have to now pay them for the value of that stuff. Some people will be like, what happened? What was the assets? What was the reasons? And most of the time for stuff like that, depending on the circumstance, we'll usually give them the benefit of the doubt, give them a chance and grow from it. Some people will be like, $8,000 out the door, buddy. But I feel like there's usually two things that will happen to the person's character when they have this opportunity, because I've gone through it myself. When I've been given the door, it makes a culture of fear and not willing to share truth when there's a problem in the business. And therefore you create hesitation in your team, and that makes it difficult to solve problems when they're really big. So I found that if they have the ability, and it kind of comes to family, if your kid makes a mistake or something, and will they have enough trust in their leaders or in their parents to be able to come to their parents or their leaders and say, hey, look, this happened. And it's a small thing, the business can recover. If it's financial, it's all good. And the person's character development allows them to know that if I can come to my leaders about this, when there's a huge problem, I know that they're mature enough that I can come to them and tell them, hey, we've got a seriously big problem. Instead of it being swept under the rug and say, nothing's wrong here, buddy. We're all good. And then finding out later on a massive issue, and it might be bankruptcy. So that's some of the ways that it's brought in the values that I believe in into the business. And these are practices you would have seen in other companies as well.
Yeah. No, there are a few things that I'd like to go down specifically, because obviously I'm on mindset and mental performance, and even with teams and leadership now, that's where I'm going down. But that specific part of hard to accept, and then about when you're transitioning to say a new venture and you've got to enter that zone of I don't know anything, I don't know what I don't know, and it's obviously going to have a pay card if you're going from something where you've done for decades to that. Take me through, what was your way of overcoming that? Because I think anyone listening here, I've got a lot of high-performing people who are wanting to start a business, people in a business, maybe they're in this exact spot now, they've started it and they're like, fuck, what am I doing? Is this the right decision? What's kind of the thing you did to get through that hard-to-accept phase and build that commitment and to the cause?
I'm not going to lie. Every other leader I had followed, other than the military and in my missionary days, every other leader, which was worked for Cleanaway, worked for the local government of West Australia, worked for different councils, every leadership base by those two, I could not find myself to feel that this is the kind of culture I want to be a part of. And I would be happy to work here for the next 2 decades. And I believe that my personal desire to help all these other people, I'm going to be able to achieve those things. And so it was a really good look in the mirror to say, you either choose the life you're going to have and live with that regret when you're 60, 70, or you take the chance and you buck the fuck up and you get it done. And if you fail with your respects, and you can go to the grave knowing you tried.
Love that.
That's a tough call every human being has to take. And there's no easy way around it.
Choose the life you want. That's very good.
Yeah.
And you're comparing that low heaviness of what is the beginning of a business to the potential outcome. That's also scary, like you're saying. Another thing, I guess, shifting. No. I guess shifting gears a little bit more into company culture. That's something I'm more interested in now. One-on-one, for example, is kind of quite easy you can build a relationship and get to know them. But, for example, how many employees does KeepSpace have now?
We're 22 at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22.
So that when you're scaling up to, you come from like 4 or 5 guys, and you kind of voice those core people that you started it with. How do you find injecting these values from your family into the business at scale? What type of practices do you do? What people do you have in charge to foster that? It sounds like you got a good culture there, by the sound of it.
There's some hard practices and this is where, like the last thing, you live by those values and you stick by it through all the challenges that will come, or you compromise and your rewards will be as it is in the business model. So one thing that I've tried to make sure is that as we all grow and develop, and my mentors have shared this with me, you'll reach a stage where pride and greed and corruption for financial management can really sink in. So you got to have in place true, honest, bare bones, naked truth to your team, which will in turn create that same trust that they believe in you as a leader to do. And one of those policies that we set long ago was one that was mostly based around small business restaurants, and it was called an open book policy. So KeepSpace has an open book policy, and what that generally means is that we tell everyone in the business how much the company makes, how much we spend. We show them the P&L, we show them the balance sheet. We don't hide any of it, so they can look at the numbers themselves and they can see how much the budget is for salaries, how much the budget is for shipping with all the carriers, how much the budget is for marketing, how much budget for everything. So the leaders have to show a level of competency to build the trust that the people who are following these leaders can believe in the decisions that they're making is for the best for the business and for the team. That's sometimes a lot of leaders will have a lot of conflict with that because they're like, sometimes they like to hide their incompetencies or feel inadequate in some way. But I feel that it is the greatest strength to be able to be truthful with your team and honest with your team about what you can and what you cannot do. Because therefore, they will have more empathy for what you're not good at. And they know that what you're actually giving them to be responsible for, they know that without them in your team, they know that it will fail. So they take more ownership over it. And so that open book policy has allowed that to go through. The second, there's 3. The second one is we've chosen to have open salary display, which means we tell everyone how much everyone is paid. And the reason why we thought that this will be a helpful process, and very few companies do this, like this is not a common thing. I thought it'd be important to let them know how much the CEO is paid, how much the CTO is paid, how much the Chief Operation Officer is paid, and how much each staff member is paid within their team. Because I wanted it to be able to reflect a reduction in corruption, a reduction in favoritism, and a focus on a collective group. Because everything I've learned in the military, the Army actually does this. The Australian Defence Force actually presents every year how much each rank is paid. And that's where I saw that in physical practice. I thought, the Army doesn't fuck about, and they're very good at building teams. And they're very good at weeding out people that focus on themselves. And they're very good at keeping people that will work for the collective. And that bond that was made when I was serving, I I genuinely thrive in that because you depend upon your fellow soldiers to help you through challenges and weak points and lift you up. And they all knew you're all grunts. They all know you're all getting paid shit, but you work together. And so I thought so we don't do commissions. We don't do like a low base and add bonuses. We don't do any of that crap. We just say, look, you have families, you got mortgages, you got car payments to make. We'll pay you livable wages. But as you can see, we have an open book policy. This is how much we can genuinely actually afford. And so this is how much we're going to pay everybody. And then in that openness, we also then, at that same sharing of how much they're getting paid, we tell them at the same time when they get their contracts that, look, guys, we plan to increase you by, you're going to get 60,000 this first year, you're going to go to 68,000 the following year, you're going to go to 72 the year after. And so they kind of already got pre-established pay rises over 3 years from day one joining KeepSpace. And that creates a lot of security, and it reduces the team to try to go into those annual meetings of, can I get a pay raise? Oh, I'm so awkward. I'm an introvert. I can't do this conversation. It's making me stressed. I'm going to go look for another job. So it creates a sense of stability that I felt is really, really important and lives by the values. So it creates stability in the team, the training we invest in them, and knowing that we are backing them in that way. That's the second one. And then the third one is a management tool that we use, which is called Objectives and Key Results, or in short, the acronym is called OKRs. Yeah. OKRs was built by an amazing guy called John Doerr, who was a heavy investor in Google with the two Google boys. And they implemented OKRs as a management tool for them in their first 2 decades of building the company. And through that, they were able to build through. Really, really short description of what an OKR is that it's like a KPI, but a KPI is very linear. It's either a yes or no at the end. You either achieved it or you didn't, or it's a percentage, but it doesn't hold factors. So if I use an example, let's say, all right, in this software that we have, we need to make a release within 3 months. The KPI is to achieve it by the end of the quarter. 3 months go by. Did we achieve it or not? KPI achieved, KPI not. If the KPI not achieved, looks bad for the development team. Development team, what the fuck? We pay you all this money. You didn't achieve the KPI. You're not getting the bonus or whatever it is. Explain to me the reasons why you didn't, why do you look incompetent? Or they achieve the KPI. Congratulations, development team. You've done a great job. And then everyone feels really happy. KPI done. But then you look later, you've got tech debt, you got bugs, you got things that went through. Why is all that stuff there? Oh, because they wanted to make the KPI hit. So we found that was a real drama. So what this does with that problem is the solution that was implemented by John Doerr, and there's a book called Measure What Matters. If you want to take a look, Measure What Matters is a book that we usually give to everyone in our team by John Doerr. It goes through the concept of create an objective. Let's just say the same objective is have the release of the software by 3 months. That's the objective. And then it has below it, usually up by commonly, 3 key results, which is the KR part from the OKR. And the key result 1 will be achieve the level of code by the date time frame. And then the second one might be have test quality by 50%. And then the third one might be ensure that team meetings are met every week, something like that. And then what it is then the key results are then measured. And so the first key result will be, it's a very simple one. It's the KPI. It's like either it's achieved or it's not. But then the test quality will show like the percentage of test coverage. So if we get a high test coverage, but we don't get it completed, you've got a measurable activity that shows whether the core of the goal is done. But then you've got a quality measurement that allows you to know, even if it was achieved, is the quality of the achievement to a level that would be happy to be done? Or was it rushed? So they were able to receive the completion of the release, but there's no test coverage They didn't spend any time in it because it was such a heavy release. And therefore, you're going to have to go back and clear the tech debt. And this is what we found. And so as a team at KeepSpace, taking in all these things we've talked about transparency and honesty, talking about it's okay to fuck up, talked about transparency on the financials, talked about salary transparency and competency within teams and leadership. You put all that together, and what we do is every financial year, we'll get together, and this is another policy that's been implemented. Sorry, I'm giving you a bonus fourth one.
Bonus.
What we'll do is every June or July, by the end of the financial year, we'll do an internal SWOT analysis with everyone's input in board. We have a big catch up, and what it does is it goes through all the things we're good internally, all the things we're not so good. All the things we're good internally, all the things we're good externally, all the things that we are good, not so good internally, all the things we're not so good externally, things that could hurt us. And then after that, we come up with the solutions. What are all the things we could do to continue to get better at? Where's all the things we could continue to take advantage of? And then there's all the things we're really bad at and solutions we could implement. And then all the things that could threaten to kill us and that we should probably have risk avoidance on. And there's this huge feedback from everyone's perspective. And then we collect all that feedback from all the locations where all the teams are overseas, within the two cities. And then we create the objectives and key results for the year. And then that's the task set for the next 12 months. And we all work towards those goals that we've all set. Usually there's financial and there's quality ones and internal improvements. And therefore, there's a level of ownership because they've raised the challenge. They haven't been in trouble by raising the challenge that we're having. And therefore, it creates an internal improvement, which then allows them to see progress. And therefore, it creates that whole dynamic, and it just loops around. And so that's how those values are implemented by those multiple practices that we do inside.
That was good. That's exactly the answer I wanted.
That's a lot of talk.
And so, more talking on that, I find it super interesting because it sounds like you maybe have tested a few leadership styles in your company. When you landed on this one, which sounds like it's working well, how did you know that this was the best? What else did you try? And how did you know that didn't work? What worked, what didn't?
Well, nothing helps you learn what doesn't work when you try. Okay. So, like any new business owner, you take models of examples of previous business owners that you worked with, and you think that works. One of the strongest ones we are all very well aware of is dictatorship. Everyone knows a real prick of a boss who just wants to be a cunt to everyone and isn't willing to admit his mistakes or her mistakes and blame other people for their mistakes, for the mistakes that they may have contributed to. And that's a leadership style, right? We all know that one. I did that one and I'm not proud of it. But I did based on what I knew. And that was when I was in Koala Box, I was doing that kind of leadership style where no matter what I said, that's how it was. That's how we do things. So I recognize that didn't work so well because I could never build a team. I could never get anyone to stick around long enough. I always came from the attitude, oh, there's no good people out there. But internally, as the mirror, I was a terrible person to other people because of my own lack of incompetencies across all the skill sets, accounting and marketing and sales and all that. And that's self-reflection. You don't pick that up in the first 3 years. That comes over time. So I realized that don't work. So I had to figure out another way to be better. And that's where I had to be more charismatic. And so I tried to be more charismatic and then try to be the fun guy and hang out with people and do what all the other startups do, like have the bean bags and have the chill times. But then you become too friendly that it became a little hard to Uh, well, actually, that I didn't do like a full reverse of character. It was just trying to be cool, but also like, but still, you got to do it this way, guys. And that was always hard. And then what I also found is that I had a full-on rebellious streak against regulation. After working in local government and all that, I really didn't want a corporate feel.
Yeah.
And so it was super freeloading, and people who joined us and wanted some consistency where there was none,
Yeah.
clearly they didn't stay.
It
and
just
they didn't work out
reminds
too
me
well
of
either.
Richard Branson when he's first starting his Virgin Records.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Chilling out, playing the guitars
Yeah.
with all the studio
Too
mates.
chill.
Yeah, I know the book. So there were multiple different components, and I had to learn as a leader how to find that way. And I am now 42. I've been on this journey since I was 30, 28. I've been doing it for a while. I would say that I've reached a level where I'm not competent enough yet, because I know there's still a lot more of development I got to go through.
Yeah. That was my
But I'm
next
at a
question.
stage where I feel like there's a lot of bases covered.
Yeah.
Like, you know. So, I mean, is the leadership I'm doing now the best one? Could be. I don't know. I'm doing what I know, and currently it seems to be working. I mean, we did 3.6 million last financial year, and we looked at our financial growth and all the different things, opening up a new warehouse to create more space to be able to distribute more product and add in more businesses. And then based on that projections, our accounting teams has told us that will get us around 4.5 million. 3.6 to 4.5 is what we're going for this financial year, next 12 months. And then the software development team's working on the product of our inventory management system as a release, and then the revenue that comes from that and other projects that are going through. And that all those things, I'm kind of going off topic from your question, from the whole different leadership styles, but it's more like, I don't know how to express it. It's more just, there's a range of leaderships that you watch, like, and you look at and you admire in other great men and women around our history, and you try to emulate some of that character in yourself, but you still try to be true to who you are, so that you don't have to face imposter syndrome. Because man, that shit will stifle you like crazy.
Interesting.
Like, I got like guys in my team right now who go into a level of leadership, and we're training them up to really be amazing individuals, because they are amazing individuals, but amazing individuals to others, so that they can reflect and communicate themselves to them. But it makes them feel inadequate, which is what we all do as entrepreneurs. We feel, I can't pull this off. It's going to be super hard. So then I'm like, I've got imposter syndrome. I can't do this. I'm like, well, stop trying to be someone you're not. Be yourself. Reflect on who you are and what you're good at and what you're not good at, and be honest with that. And then you won't feel imposter syndrome. I'm going off on an internal thing. That's something that's going on, but I'm sure it's pretty reflectable upon what this conversation's about.
Yeah, no, it's it is. You're pretty much answering questions that I didn't even get to ask, which is great. I think.
Oh, cool.
I get. Yeah, that's great. I haven't even had to ask them. You're just saying it's great. I think. Cool. It's congrats as well on the continued growth. I think because I'm kind of in this space of leadership within a company, and specifically mindset in teams, and how do you get them to not feel imposter syndrome. That's like literally what I do as well. But your your employee retention, it sounds like it would probably work quite well on this, because I haven't really heard this culture, open book policy before. And I think the trajectory you want to go, obviously that 250 mark, that it's funny you say you don't want to be corporate, but you will have to at some point get some type of structure there. And what's that looking like? What are you foreseeing you have to turn into to get to that level?
That is a man that doesn't stand before you today. So I wouldn't know how to answer that. But if I had to give it my best shot from where I'm looking from today to that, from my current 4 million level to, let's just get to let's just go first 50 million. Yeah, that's a pretty long way to go. Yeah. 250 is a big jump. I can tell you at least 50. Because the goal for 250 is like this, that is beyond my lifespan, but it is where I think it can go to. I feel that me personally, before I die, I can probably get it to about 50K, 50 mil, 50K. 50 mil, maybe 80 mil if I'm really lucky.
Don't die.
Well, you know, it's a lot of years. But shit, what was the question you were asking about?
So yeah, more about your leadership. So like the leadership that has taken you to get to 22 people and manage them and get them to fulfill certain responsibilities and growth. What does that next level look like?
Oh yeah. For me, to become that person. I'm as the years are going down the road, there is a feeling that people say that you have to inevitably drop your values to be able to become a focus on the profit. And I'm being stubbornly fierce against that. Where I genuinely want to keep people first before profit. Because the people in the team are the ones who you want to build life with and build longevity with. That's something I feel gets lost when you focus on profits, because it's all about who's the right people on the bus, kick out the ones that aren't so good, and then focus on profits and burn out as many people as you can, because they're all interchangeable as the business grows. But I don't think that would be a happy life. I don't think it would be. I think you can still make insane amount of wealth while still developing character in great people to become great leaders when you pass on. And that practice, that leadership role, I don't know what this looks like. If I had to give it a guess, I'd say it would be something like an internal training process that we would have within KeepSpace, where we would be internally training our own team of leaders and the kind of expectations to develop them internally. But that takes capital we don't have and time I don't have right now. But that's where I could see it going. Another one would be how each team leader is managing their teams. I've actually tried to consider this. Most of the time when people are up for promotion, now this has not been in practice, it's but theory to me right now, but it's something I'm trying to play in my head, so it's very fresh. The concept is that I'm like, how can you weed out terrible leaders? Because there's a practice that we all know where people focus more on career progression instead of taking care of the team that they're responsible for. Because people who are in career progression, they step on people, they take the rewards of those who had done the work and make it their own, and creates a challenging team leadership. And that person to be excelled within the company can make it very toxic. And once you've got toxicity in the company, it's very difficult to remove, because they get into a level of authority and become very difficult. So I'm trying to review how that's going to be, especially when we enter into the United States. I'm not going to be in a position to be able to have such a finger on the pulse. At 20 people, I can do it. 30 people, it starts to get a challenge. When I get to 50, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull this off. So it's going to need a great group of leaders in KeepSpace to do this. And one thing I'm floating the idea about is something that they do in the Navy SEALs in America, where the elevation of leaders in that organization is done by the men who are in their collective group, where they ask the men themselves, look, guys, we need a new squad member. We need a new squad leader. and that leader is going to be taking on a role. We need to take a decision together. Who would you want to lead you into the next battle? Yeah, a very democratic approach. Who would you want to be? Doesn't put their hand up because they're trying to get promoted, but will do it because all his mates need him. Who's the one that's always in the back, having the last meal? Those are the kind of leaders you want. And I feel like if you give a voice to your team instead of voice from people who get marinated by smooth talkers, I think if they have the voice to then say, this guy, this girl, always working hard, always last one, always checking up on me, making sure I'm okay, making sure I'm learning how to do this. And they all collectively say it's this person. But then you've got another dude that's always like talking to the senior leader and he's like, oh yeah, how's he doing? Really, like, I call it smoozing, just smoozing. Building a relationship for the purpose of progression, but fucks everyone over. You can't tell what you see on one side and not the other. So I want to try to implement that practice in somehow, where it's internal leadership developed by their own team and then having the value put forward. And that's something, based on your question, and again, it's theory, but I feel like I'll probably try to put that into practice. But it's not something I know how to put into practice, and I don't know when because we're so on the growth path.
That was more of an expanding question.
Yeah. So hopefully I answered it.
No, that was good. One last question, because I know we're getting to the end of 1 hour or close to, maybe just over. What makes a great leader now that you've had this experience in building a team? What's the consistent 2 or 3 traits that you see that really is what makes a great team and a great company ultimately?
What makes a great leader, in my opinion, is someone who can be honest with himself and can be honest with the people around them and have the ability to communicate that. I think that makes a great leader. What makes a great team, I think, is the ability for them to trust one another, the ability for them to be able to communicate with each other in a way that all of them can lift up and know everyone's capabilities and challenges, and that they would all accept them as they are. That's the 2 I know. What was the third one you said?
So what are the two or three traits that make a good leader? So honest with themselves, ability to trust and communicate.
Yeah, I rambled off a bit there. Sorry. I'm sure in the recording you'll be able to pick it up.
No, that's good. And I guess, I normally like to end it with, if time, you are the person now because of everything you've done up until this point, but I do like to play a little devil's advocate. If you were to be able to speed up time and give you the results you've got now in a faster period of time, what would you be telling your younger self?
What? Say that again? So like, if I was myself going back in time, or is it like doing it the whole thing quicker?
Yeah. So what would you tell your younger self that would allow you to achieve what you've achieved now in a faster period of time? Even though it's required. You are you because of the time, but devil's advocate.
Is Corey? I don't know. I would say, and thank you for giving me the time to think about that. I think if I had the opportunity to go back and talk to 20-year-old Jesse, who was super chill about life and was still figuring stuff out, was super cocky. Like, I was a cocky cunt when I was a young guy. If I had to go back to talk to that kid to try to make a leadership role out of me now, I would say focus on being better at building relationships, and don't worry about trying to do it faster. Just focus on building those relationships and creating the value for them. That's probably the greatest thing, because everything else is going to get taught along the way. Because
absolutely,
there's something. I was reading a book right now. My book that I'm reading is Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. It's the audio version. So if any of you guys, if you and whoever's listening to this, if you listen to that audio book, my God, it is so good. And one of the parts in it that I'll reflect from not taking any, what the authors were sharing on that, which I think is valuable to repeat, is that the Steve Jobs we all know from Apple, the 21-year-old Steve Jobs that we see as a brash, no compromise, very aggressive, staunch young man who led Apple into its beginning infancies of the Macintosh, was not the same guy as Steve Jobs at 50, who was the billionaire leading company man who led an amazing team of people to a vision that he inspired other people to continue, knowing he was going to die. Those two people are vastly different. And the only thing I can say to reflect upon this is that the people that we are when we start is something that we can aspire to become the people that we are not yet in the future if we progress down this route. Because the scariest thing, as you would know, is to develop yourself to a level to achieve things that we cannot achieve yet. And that encouragement to know that you could be a real LSD fuckwit guy like Steve Jobs at 20, and develop yourself into the inspiring leader that he was before he died, Steve Jobs at 50. The same guy, different characteristics trait. So me at 20, me trying to tell myself who I am at 41, sorry. It's too much life to put into that heart. And he ain't even going to suck it up. And everyone who's listening, you know what it's like when you got kids that are 5. You're trying to tell your 5-year-old how to be 30. It's not going to work. There's just so much that kid can absorb. So you just got to let life. You just got to be okay with let life go as it does. I hope that answers the question.
It does to some extent. No, that's good. Well, look, we'll leave it there. Did you have any final messages that you'd like to give to the audience?
Look, honestly, Corey, it's great that you're having conversations with many people, and I'm sure the people that are listening to this are probably like, guys, what are the kind of people that are listening to this? What's the demographic?
Mostly young entrepreneurs, high pressure corporate people just want to be better, really. I come from more personal development. Cool. So, goals, clarity, purpose, fulfillment.
Yeah, I see. What I would say is that those young individuals that are listening to this, or those who are in a lot of stressful positions right now, trying to meet whatever goals you're trying to achieve, I would just say that life is very long, and that you will be living, if you live well, you'll live till 90, 80 at least. So what you're trying to do in your current years, it's okay to make those mistakes, and it's okay if you don't get it right. And that if you actually are trying to run a business or run something on the side, and you genuinely believe that that's a life you want to live, then have the humility to accept what you don't know and find out from those who do know, and do your best to emulate from them without the expectation of the result that it would bring. Just focus on the value, focus on just giving first. And if you can do that well, then your value and your wealth will follow. It doesn't come at the beginning, it comes at the end. And that is when you have the right and you've earned it. You don't earn it at the beginning, talking like a wisecrack and being a smart ass and trying to do lip service, trying to raise that pitch money, and you get that coin and then you're in debt. that shit ain't where it's at. It's actually after you've made the commitment, recognize that there are so many skills that you don't have. You're willing to accept and learn them, and you're willing to put in at least a decade. And through that, you'll have the respect of the things that you've been aspiring to become will be who you will be. And I hope that inspires you to look.
Oh, that's great. That's actually very good. Thanks so much for coming on, Jesse. Where can people find you? Or your KeepSpace, or I know
I've
you're
been pretty
really
quiet lately,
social
man.
media. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been on Instagram very much, and we have a YouTube channel called KeepSpace if you want to have a look at it. But we haven't posted a lot. We've just been doing the grind, man. We've just been working our ass off. But if you wanted to see me, LinkedIn is where I live. If you want to send me a friend request, that's cool. You can talk there. That's where Corey and I connected. Otherwise, it's on all the content that we produce. It's on YouTube, and that's pretty publicly available. That's pretty much it, bro.
All right. Perfect. Well, I appreciate you coming on this evening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night, my man. We'll be in touch soon.
You too. Thanks, mate. See you later.